On the 5th of April, 2023, the Super Mario Bros. Movie had just released in theaters. With an all-star cast of Jack Black, Charlie Day, Seth Rogen, Anya Taylor-Joy, and at the time, the very controversial Chris Pratt, who was receiving backlash from fans after being cast as Mario.
And Mario
was it really worth watching?
Yo! No way!
First, of course, is Mario. He will be played by...
You gotta be kidding me! You got me feeling fucked up! Yes!
But that didn't seem to matter for too long.
Super Mario Brothers, the bros are smashing yet another box office record. The animated movie officially crossing the $1 billion mark, thanks to my son seeing it 7 times.
A studio that didn't exist before 2007 had just produced one of the highest grossing animated movies of all time. That studio was Illumination, and this video is about its rise to the top of the animation industry. To understand Illumination, we'll have to talk about Chris Meledandri. By early 2007, he was already one of the most respected figures in the family entertainment industry. As president of 20th Century Fox Animation, he had overseen the Ice Age franchise, a massive IP for Blue Sky Studios at the time. He supervised films like Robots and Dr. Seuss's Horton Hears a Who, turning Fox into a legitimate competitor in the animation space. But that would be the last movie Meledandri would make for Fox. When his contract came up for renewal, Fox desperately wanted to keep him. But Universal Pictures made him an offer he couldn't refuse. Not only a job, but an ownership stake in his own animation company. On January 17, 2007, Illumination Entertainment was founded with Meledandri at the helm. Universal would finance and distribute the films, but Meledandri would retain creative control. It was the kind of deal most executives could only dream of. From day one, Meledandri knew he couldn't beat Pixar or DreamWorks at their own game. He knew he couldn't outspend them. So he did something different. He built a studio around a radically efficient business model.
The idea of making films efficiently was really all about sustainability. I just believed that if we could come up with an efficient model, that we'd have a greater chance of our business sustaining through ups and downs.
Where major animation studios were casually spending over hundreds of millions of dollars per film, Illumination would keep budgets between 60 and 80 million. Where others built massive in-house animation teams, Illumination outsourced the actual animation work to a Paris-based studio called MacGuff. Illumination's first project was Risky. Sergio Pablos, an animator that created a concept under the working title Evil Me and pitched it unsolicited to Universal Pictures.
Then an opportunity came to pitch it to none other than Chris Meledandri, and I pitched him 3 stories, and Despicable Me, which is one of them. He basically tossed the other 2. He completely ignored the other 2, but this one he said, I want this. And he meant it.
Gru's original design was much darker than the version we have now, but they had it changed because they thought it would be hard to sympathize with the character later on in the film. They had it changed to make him look like an emperor penguin, which fits him well because emperor penguins take care of their children. Evil Me, which turned to Despicable Me, was centered on a villain, a bald, pointy-nosed supervillain named Gru, who adopts 3 orphan girls as part of a scheme to steal the moon. It was the kind of premise that would have scared off other movie executives and animators. But Chris Meledandri was determined on trusting his instincts with this movie. Despicable Me released on July 9th, 2010, with a modest budget of $69 million. Going against Toy Story 3 and Shrek Forever After, Pixar and DreamWorks' biggest IPs at the time. The question was if Illumination would even be able to even break even against these 2, and the answer was a resounding,
"Can I drink this?"
Do you want to explode? Grow!
The film opened to $60 million and went on to gross over $543 million worldwide. Critics praised its charm and genuine humor. Audiences fell in love with the heartwarming story of a villain learning to be a father. But more than anything, they couldn't get enough of those weird yellow henchmen in the background that would play a much bigger role to their success in the future. Universal Pictures had a hit on its hands. More importantly, Illumination had proven its model worked. Despicable Me 2 arrived in 2013 with a similarly modest budget of $76 million and earned $970 million worldwide, just shy of $1 billion, establishing themselves as a formidable name in the animation industry. The Minions had evolved from background characters to scene stealers, their gibberish language and childish antics becoming the franchise's signature. Between the first and second Despicable Me films, Illumination released other projects, like Hop back in 2011, which unfortunately holds the title of their lowest grossing movie in the studio's history. But it makes sense since even though it had a lot of CGI animation, it was still a live action movie, which is such an odd thing to make right after having probably the best animation studio debut of all time, right behind Toy Story. But in 2012, they locked back in with my personal favourite film from the studio, The Lorax, which grossed $348 million and gave us songs like How Bad Can I Be and Let It Grow.
Let it die, let it shrivel up and come on, who's with me, huh?
It wasn't as successful as the first two movies, but still did pretty well despite the controversy over its commercialization, which contradicted Dr. Seuss's anti-consumerism message. But the studio didn't care about critical debates over artistic integrity, they cared about building a sustainable business. Then in 2015 came the film that would cement Illumination's place in animation history.
Salut Marco? Una, deux. King Bob!
Universal knew they had something special with the Minions. In July 2015, they gave the Yellow Henchmen their own spin-off film, a prequel showing their history of serving villains throughout time. The marketing campaign was absolutely insane. Bloomberg estimated Universal spent over $500 million promoting the film, the largest promotional push in the distributor's history. They partnered with 850 toy brands and created an official Pantone color called Minion Yellow. The gamble paid off spectacularly. Minions opened to $115 million domestically and went on to gross over $1.1 billion worldwide. It became the third animated film ever to cross $1 billion after Toy Story 3 and Frozen. More impressively, it was the first non-Disney animated film to achieve that milestone. With the first two Despicable Me films and now Minions, Illumination's first 5 films had collectively grossed over $3 billion worldwide. The Minions weren't just popular, they were a cultural phenomenon.
Look, I'm in the same boat as Mason Quinn. For as much as we love Gru, the Minions kind of make the movie.
Yeah, because I love the Minions.
The Minions are adorable.
They're the height of the movie.
They sold toys, clothes, Happy Meals, and theme park tickets. Chris Meledandri had created something that rivaled Mickey Mouse in merchandising. By 2016, Illumination had become a well-oiled machine. The studio was so confident in its production model that it did something never done before. They released 2 completely original animated films in the same year, both designed to launch new franchises. It was a bold gamble that could have split audiences and diluted the brand. Instead, both films became massive hits, proving that Meledandri's formula was nearly bulletproof. The Secret Life of Pets dominated the July weekend box office with a massive $104 million opening, launching the first new franchise of the summer. The film's marketing exploited America's obsession with pets. In the United States alone, Americans were expected to spend more than $62 billion in 2016 on just their pets. The cuddly creatures seemed tailor-made to sell stuffed animals and merchandise. The movie went on to gross nearly $900 million worldwide against its $75 million production budget. To give you an idea of how really cheap it is to make these movies, if you combined the grossing total of Lightyear, Elemental, and Brave that each took nearly $200 million to make, not only do both Despicable movies combined cost less than any one of these films, but they nearly doubled the earnings of all 3. Not only did they have the most profitable movie of 2016, just 5 months later, Illumination released Sing. Written and directed by Garth Jennings, the movie also containing an all-star cast and has 65 songs, the rights to which cost 15% of the film's $75 million budget, and made a little over $600 million worldwide. A clear pattern had emerged. Illumination films followed a formula. Make the movies as simple and easily marketable as possible. What do your pets do when you're not home? Animals compete in a singing competition. Animating a story people already loved. Beautiful animation that looked expensive despite the modest budgets. Heavy reliance on physical comedy, pop music, and celebrity voice talent going from Steve Carell to Sandra Bullock to Kevin Hart. But not everybody was impressed with how Illumination did things.
Their films seem to lack a certain quality and come across as average. That even though they have enough potential, talent, and resources, they seem okay with making films that play it safe. Keep it simple and keep it cheap.
Critics started to notice how Illumination prioritized profit and milking the same franchises over taking artistic risks and making interesting stories like how they did with Despicable Me. The plots were often thin. The messages were recycled and safe, compared to Pixar or DreamWorks stories that had real emotional depth, or even Studio Ghibli's unique art style. But Meledandri didn't flinch. He knew what he was making and knew what the audience loved seeing, and the market agreed with him. Audiences kept showing up. The Grinch earned $540 million in 2018. The Rise of Gru made nearly $1 billion in 2022 despite pandemic challenges. But in my humble opinion, it's the worst movie they've ever made, but clearly, a lot of people liked it. But the ultimate validation came in 2023. For years, Illumination had been developing an animated adaptation of Nintendo's Super Mario franchise in partnership with game creator Shigeru Miyamoto. The 1993 live-action Mario film had been a disaster. This time, with Nintendo heavily involved to ensure authenticity, expectations were high. But if anyone could meet those expectations, it was Illumination. The Super Mario Bros. Movie opened on April 5th, 2023, with a staggering $200 million 5-day debut, the second biggest opening ever for an animated film. It had earned $1.3 billion worldwide on a $100 million budget, split between Nintendo and Universal, becoming the second highest grossing animated film of all time, surpassing Frozen and nearly every Pixar classic. It was the highest grossing film of 2023, the biggest video game adaptation of all time. For a studio founded just 16 years earlier, it was an unprecedented achievement. As of 2026, the Despicable Me franchise, including the third and fourth movie, has generated over $6.5 billion globally across 6 films. No other animated franchise even comes close. Love or hate them, Illumination and Chris Meledandri have earned their place in animation history.